What's up, guys? Jason Ralia, owner of Ralia Performance. If you're not familiar with who I am, I put my link below to my Instagram handle, my business, and my business page. Make sure to check us out. And today kicks off the start of a series of videos we're doing, talking about programming and some of the things that make up programming and are good programming. Today we're going to start off with principles or some laws, if you will, that you should consider when you're going to program for yourself, clients, or whomever. So first would be on the list specificity, we have accommodation, we have overload, and then fatigue management. I didn't really list them in order of what's most important, but specificity is definitely going to be number one, no doubt about that. And what is specificity? Specificity is just a specific type of training relative to your goal. So how specific is this to your goal or your competition? So if you're in powerlifting and your goal is to get higher 1RM, the highest specificity would be training to a 1RM. Or if your goal is to get better at sprinting, the higher specificity is going to be sprinting near or at the distance that you need to get good sprinting at. Likewise for bodybuilding, for that, specificity is kind of more training in a hypertrophic way, which simply could be higher reps and different type of programming mechanisms for that. So not going to go in depth on that. So specificity is something you need to consider first. Is the training plan you're doing or laying out, is it going to be specific to your goals and what you're trying to accomplish? If you're going to try to get a bigger 1RM, then you need to train heavier weights and heavier leading up to your meet. So if you're training fives at 5 weeks out, the closer you get to the meet, you need to get closer to training 1 repetitions. Just same thing for sprinting or bodybuilding. Make sure you're training close to what you're trying to accomplish. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but it should get close to that or at that when you're getting ready for your goal to meet that or meet. Law of accommodation just simply is a law that states that your body's going to accommodate to whatever you're doing. So if you programmed in for strength athletes 5x5 at 250 pounds, eventually 5x5 at 250 pounds is no longer going to be productive in making strength gains. Same thing maybe for exercises for a bodybuilder. If you're used to using barbell rows at a certain angle or variation, at some point the same weight, load, or even that exercise itself is not going to be as effective as it once was. So does that mean that you need to change weekly as a beginner? Absolutely not. Even for exercises as an advanced athlete, you don't need to change every week. It just means you need to take in consideration that your body's going to adapt. So if you're that person doing 5x5 at 250, the following week you should probably do 5x5 at 255 or 260, considering that you could handle it. If it gets to the point where you can't handle going up in weight, you might add a set or a rep. For bodybuilding, it simply could just be changing the variation. You could be changing the load, adding more sets and reps in, all those things. It goes into law of the accommodation and kind of leads us into this one here. Principle of overload, which is very important as well. And it's just as I stated, whatever you do, you're going to get accommodated to it. So then you need to overload by adding more sets, reps, or weight, or another stimulus maybe could be exercise, probably more for hypertrophy because it has related to muscular damage. For strength training, overload, you're better off sticking with adding more sets, reps, or load on the bar. And then fatigue management is just something that you really need to consider as far as to managing your training to make sure that you're not going out in left field and or deviating off the path you need to go to. So if you're in a strength sport, you can't continuously continue to add sets and reps. At some point, there's a diminishing return, and you're not going to be able to recover from that. And you want to catch it before it happens, because everyone's afraid to, oh, I'm overtraining. You're probably not, and you're probably not going to get there, but you will if you don't consider fatigue management. Fatigue management simply could just be capping your sets and reps per day based on a perceived exertion. It can be programming in deloads every 3 or 4 weeks or every 6 weeks. I strongly recommend in a program that you have that you do get in deloads, especially for strength athletes. As for bodybuilders, it could be a little bit different of just having a lower volume week, which is technically a deload, or just a week where you're not trying to push it as hard or you don't train as much as a frequency. Those can work for strength training. There's just some very differences that you'd want to do to optimize your performance. Overall, make sure that you take into consideration specificity, is the training program you're going to do or making specific to your goals that you're trying to accomplish at the time and in your long-term goals. Accommodation. Are you changing your program to make sure that you're adapting? Are you adding weight to the bar each week, or sets, reps? Sometimes you don't have to. You can look at it in months. Don't think that you have to get better every workout or you have to get better every week. Look at it in the long term, especially as you advance as a lifter and you take into consideration as your long-term development. Sometimes pushing it way too fast can lead to injury. Again, are we using overload? Make sure you're using overload, that you're going into your program and you're considering, okay, this week I did 3x3 on the bench press at 250. I don't know why I use 250 again, but that's what came to my head. And then the next week you're trying to add weight, sets, or reps. And then fatigue management. Are you accounting for the fact that you're just not superhuman and you're going to get tired and you're going to need to manage your fatigue no matter the sport that you're in? So as long as you're taking these 4 principles, laws, or considerations into consideration, you're going to develop a better program and it's going to lead to long-term results. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure to check in next week for our next video series.